Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's, well, it's not really a Q&A, it's a round table type discussion. So we have no player questions this week, but we have a bunch of topics that we know you guys are interested in, so stay tuned for that. We also have some really special TOA sneak peeks if you want to see them. I'm your host, Mod Light, and today I'm joined by Mods Kieren.
Hello.
Elena.
Hello.
Mac.
Hello.
Rock.
Howdy.
And Bruno.
Yo.
Woo, that was so cringe, but I love it. Welcome everyone. How's it going? I will start with you, Rock. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Just trying to get in some extra Amethyst XP while we do the live stream. So all good here.
Awesome, love it. No XP waste. How are you doing, Mac? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing real good. I have nothing really interesting to report, but thumbs up.
I don't believe you on that one, Mac. I'm pretty sure you've been working on a very cool project recently, but I know that like your lips must be sealed because it's top secret for now. Bruno, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Also, nothing huge to share, but yeah, it's been a good week.
Oh yeah, we saw the release of mobile fully, so I know that you've been on that recently and super busy. Elena, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you. Been playtesting some Tombs of Amascut today, so that's exciting. Really can't wait to show you guys more of that. So.
Awesome, so exciting. Kieren, what about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Also super excited about Tombs of Amascut. Been off a lot of balancing conversations this week. It's all we're in the sort of the latter stages, so to speak, in that regard. A lot of number crunching. Everyone's favourite bit.
Awesome, nice. So some balancing and tweaks and testing and things like that. Sounds really interesting. So like I said, for this week, we're just going to kind of have a discussion amongst ourselves with some community topics. Trying something different this week, so let us know your feedback on it. I'll go through some announcements and then we'll get to some content. So exclamation mark game update. This week's update was changes to unranked GIM mode, as well as updates and improvements for our newest skilling activity, Giants Foundry. Find that with exclamation mark game updates. We also have the transcript of last week's stream where we talked about a bunch of player suggestions and things like that. So exclamation mark transcript for that. And just as we went live, we published the Gillinor Gazette, which has a bunch of updates for you guys. Exclamation mark Gazette will take you to that. Right, so we just talked about Tombs of Amascut, which is our third raid coming in mid-August. That's the date that we've given you in the Gazette. And we thought it's time that we show you some sneak peeks of the raid and the build-up to the release. First of all, we couldn't miss Volkaban's Where's Wise Old Man piece of content that they've just released. We saw it on Twitter, and it sparked a huge discussion amongst the team just because of the amount of references, so we thought we'd put it in this stream today. I just want to ask you guys, like, what your impressions of it? What did you think when you first saw it?
I spent like most of my lunch looking at this, just like really examining each little thing. It's so cool.
It's so insanely detailed. I went into this at first going, okay, I'm just going to find the wise old man. And I ended up probably spending 20-30 minutes just like looking at all the fine details of this. And I still haven't found the flower, so I don't know where that is. But
Oh my gosh, yeah,
It
I
is
can relate so
isn't
much.
it?
yeah, I honestly felt kind of nostalgic because I used to have like a not a Wowzer Man book, a Where's Wally book. So yeah, it honestly just felt exactly like that. I found him really quickly because it just happened to start in the top left. But yeah, 10 out of 10.
Ah,
Don't spoil it.
yeah.
well, for everyone now.
I just know that we were sending out like screenshots of the little things that we could see in our various Slack channels, and it was just really awesome. So yeah, very, very cool piece of content this week. And yeah, Outside of that, though, we have some TOA sneak peeks, which you can, I think, find in the Gazette, but we'll show them here on stream for you guys. The first one is the concept for the Kefri room. I believe this is like a bug room, as we described it on Slack. So here you can see, I'll just give some of the text that I've been given from our wonderful team. The scholars say that the great scarab Kefri can be found in her lecture theatre, sat atop her lovely pool of dung. Once a place of great knowledge, has since been sullied by a corruption that knows no bounds. Many of Kefri's hatchlings rush to satiate her thirst for knowledge, but her mind has been twisted and she understands them no longer. Oh, how interesting. And then the next one is an in-game screenshot of that same room, which just looks amazing. Pretty awesome. Just let you guys take that all in. So no details yet on like the mechanics of the raid or things like that. We just want to kind of show off some artwork for you guys in the build up to the release. The next room we have to share with you is Zebek's room. Sorry if I'm pronouncing the names wrong. This is our crocky boy. This is the concept. I believe the concept was done by Mod Jav. All of her work is brilliant. So I'll read out what we have for that. Legend has it the lair of the great crocodile Zebek lays in ruin after many years of housing the ferocious reptilian nightmare. The room was initially much smaller, but as Zebek's hunger grew, so did he. Eventually, the room could no longer hold him, and the walls and floor gave way to make a vast open cavern. Zebek is waiting patiently for a worthy group of adventurers to devour. Wow. Big. Again, no mechanics yet. We're not going to spoil anything, but the artwork just, to me, looks brilliant, amazing. I don't know if Mac or Kieren or anyone else wants to share any more on that. Don't know necessarily how much we can say about it, but I thought it was important to share some of the artwork to give you guys a sneak peek at what you can expect in mid-August.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's nothing too much to add at the minute. I can't wait to say more. But I would just like to commend the team and everybody involved. Like, this is a step up from what we've seen before, like artistically, design-wise. It really does look phenomenal, and it's like, oh gosh, we could do this in old school. Like, it's genuinely impressive, and it's nice to see something that's quite a different style, you know, from our previous raids. A bit more dark, a bit more gruesome. There's a lot more color in this, and it's really enabled us to do some really interesting things. And I really love, obviously, the whole pyramid theme and everything going on related to that in this raid as well. So can't wait for you all to see more.
And you guys here have
really Art's really been pushing the boundaries here with what they can do. It's really impressive.
You've had the chance to try it out yourself, I believe, in playtests and stuff, right? So you've actually experienced it, and yeah, I'm sure that it's even better in-game as well. Awesome. All right, one last thing that we have to share with you is a concept and in-game render, I believe, of the Shadow of Tumakin, which is the staff that you get from the raid. So for the Shadow of Tumakin, Modjav wanted to communicate the iconography of Tumakin being sun and falcon symbology. Sorry, can't read today. The shadow element of it would then make sense to hint at eclipses and a little bird to hold up with. So I just think it looks beautiful. I can't wait to see what players think about it. What do you guys think?
Looks like we need a red and black ancestral out kit, doesn't it?
So cool. But yeah.
Someone's got all the zoomers outside as well.
Yeah, that might. I'm not sure who it is. It could be me. But yeah.
Yeah, it looks really amazing. I can't wait to see what kind of animation it does. Yeah, really excited to see that. I was like, in my head, the first time I saw it, I was imagining like somewhat of an eclipse almost when it animates. I think that would be really cool.
The art team is certainly just like pulled it out, like pulled out all the stops for this. Like it's incredible, and yeah, it's just I can't wait to see players enjoying it and loving it in game. I can't wait to see how expensive it's gonna be, or how like basically how long it's gonna take for someone to get one of these. All right, awesome. Mod Mack, you're working on TOA. I just thought I'd ask, how are you finding it? Any interesting bugs or issues that you've come across? And do you feel like it's kicking in yet? Are you nervous?
Extremely nervous, yeah, but hyped at the same time. TOA has been like the biggest project that I've been a part of since I've been at Jagex, and it's been a big part of my life for like the last year. So I think seeing people get their hands on it and finally get to experience that is going to be really rewarding. And I'm just looking forward to seeing everyone slowly work out each mechanic and die over and over again to the bosses. I think it'll be great.
Oh my gosh, yes. What's it like on release days of raids? Because I've never experienced one, but I'm sure that like there's going to be no guides yet. So what is it like for you guys as developers?
They're my favorite days in the office. I mean, it's going to be weird now. Obviously, we're at home since the last time we released a big raid. We were all in the office. You'd see, I think we've got some pictures of it somewhere. It might have went on Twitter at the time, but like, of all of us just like gathered around one monitor, like watching somebody trying to beat the final boss or whatever. Those release days where you're just seeing everybody just trying to get that first proper completion is really entertaining. It's kind of like also just that euphoric feeling of knowing it's finally out the door. Players are loving it. There's tons of Twitch streamers trying to get it done at the same time. It's really exciting.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess we will just go into the rest of the discussion topics. Try and just pretend like it's a call between us, but we know obviously players are watching. Right. So I put out a bit of a feeler post on Twitter to ask you guys, what topics are you interested in? What do you want JMod's thoughts on? And I've also been looking at Reddit and things like that in terms of game updates. So I have a good idea of what you guys want to know from us. There's things about third-party clients, DMM, PvP polling, various events that we run, our release schedule, and new skill and things like that. What are our thoughts on it? So we'll try and get through as many topics as possible. Thought we'd start with the big elephant in the room, which is what the community was talking about the whole week. The third-party client post that we put out. We put out a post on the 17th of June, reiterating that the only permitted clients outside of official ones are RuneLite, HUS, and OS Buddy. We gave you guys like a week-long grace period just to transition off of any bad clients. And recently we took action against players who were still using unapproved clients. So generally, players are curious, roughly how many bans did we issue? We talked about this in the Gazette. And the answer to this is we've banned players in the thousands. We're not specifying the exact amount of bans at this stage. I noticed a bunch of players asking about whether we are going to be removing combat achievements or infernal capes from those players who were using those unapproved clients. At this stage, we might be looking to reset speed records, but that is undecided at this stage. And are we looking to do more of these bans moving forwards? Yes, this is not a one-off approach. This will be something that we do again moving forwards. So I just thought we'd get that out of the way. Thoughts on this, guys? Do you have any kind of like thoughts on the third-party clients? And are you excited about hearing it? Specifically knowing that obviously Raids 3 is coming up, and hopefully that will mean less people using dodgy clients with Raids 3.
Is it finally the case that Tob hard mode is now Tob hard mode?
Tob entry mode is now just Tob.
Oh god. I mean, hopefully it gets more people into the kind of like competitive aspect of TOA. That's my take on it. Like, if people know that we're serious about this and that we will take action against people using the legitimate means of getting raid kills. So yeah.
It's certainly a relief as a designer not to have to worry about third-party clients as much when designing content. I know we thought about that a lot with TOA. There were a couple of the rooms when we were in the design stages that we just instantly looked at and went, well, the client will solve that in 2 seconds for you. Like, it doesn't really matter what you put in. But the fact that that's no longer the case makes it a bit easier to design, and you can actually make something that's challenging to players and fun to play without it just solving it automatically for you.
As someone who has never used like one of these clients, what kinds of things could they do for you? Because I'm not aware about it personally.
So, but when we referenced Theatre of Blood, the things that were particularly on clients, it was kind of like essentially making it to the point where you don't really have to pay as much attention as to what's going on. So it'll tell you when things are going to happen, tell you the best places to stand, tell you when to move, or in the case of the Zeg, it would tell you what path was there available, even if you wasn't the one that was given the path, and things like that, where it just completely negated the point of gameplay to the point where it was overpowered. And then, yeah, it was when something like that, and you kind of have to, if you're having to consider to redesigning content as a based off something that you have no control over like that, you then have to immediately try and take control of it as much as you can. And that is where the stances come in, where we are looking at all those different clients and custom clients and everything else as well. So, yeah.
I'm just curious, when designing something like a raid, like TOA, did you guys have that in the back of your mind? Like, could players like cheese this with some kind of third-party client or whatever? And was that something like you legitimately thought about, and did it affect anything for you?
100%. There are some rooms in Tombs of Amascut which are kind of contain their own puzzle. So having something that would solve that for you would kind of just completely ruin the room. And it was something that came up quite a lot. But now that it's getting phased out, it's a good feeling.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully that answers some questions about third-party client stuff. I always get a bit jittery when talking about it because this type of stuff is definitely not taken lightly by the community, but I'm really pleased to see such a positive response from the majority of people. I've seen a lot of creators basically praising us for taking action and actually, you know, putting our money where our mouth is kind of deal with regards to this. So I'm very happy to see that. Next up, the players wanted us to talk about DMM. We put a little bit of a statement in the Gazette, so make sure to check that out for the actual full statement. But it's fair to say that the finale didn't go as smoothly as we would have liked. And I thought it was important to share some insight from the team about why, the reasons why this happens, and just going into a little bit more of our experiences on that end. So the event wasn't streamed live. Players were wondering why it wasn't streamed live and maybe why we didn't hype it up as much as other events. So curious to know what you guys think. First of all, why didn't we hype it up as much as players think we could have?
And the key thing is we wanted to put the focus on executing the rerun, doing it properly, and not having to worry about putting on a live show at the same time. We don't want the rerun to also be seen as like a marketing stunt, because that's really not what we were trying to achieve with it. We were trying to achieve putting it right for what happened last time. Although not everything went perfectly, as mentioned, it was obviously a darn sight improved from what we did, you know, last year when we ran the original finale. We wanted to put the focus on solving as many of the DDoS risks that we had, and then run the finale smoothly as possible. And that meant not worrying about getting in casters, getting a host sorted, running a live stream. Every delay having to mean that like a user has to awkwardly try and hold up the stream for the next 40 minutes whilst we try behind the scenes to fix any issues. Like, stuff like that gives us something else to think about. It gives us an additional pressure, and at the same time, we also knew that players playing it would, of course, stream it as well, and so there was plenty of stuff online to watch, and indeed we were all watching the streams at the same time as well, and the entertainment still got out there. I thought actually when it was running smoothly, it was a thoroughly entertaining watch to actually watch the players involved and seeing Foe cast it as well from the stream he was watching too. So, like, I think that hopefully gives you some insight into why we chose to go this way. I think it wasn't the most important aspect of this Deadman finale.
Absolutely. So, what actually happened from our point of view that caused the rerun to not go as smoothly? Obviously, I think it was an improvement on the previous one, but there was a little blip, and obviously that affected many players participating. So could you go into a bit more detail about what that was and what happened, really, for those who maybe weren't watching?
The big thing is we've got to be slightly careful with what we say when it comes to this sort of stuff, because as many of you probably well know, DDoSing is a major issue, not just for RuneScape, not just for Oldschool, but gaming in general. Anything on the internet is always at that kind of risk, and it is a cat and mouse game. It's very hard to protect against. Now, obviously, since we ran the finale last year, we spent time analysing what sort of attack vectors the bad actors used. We assessed how could we better protect against them, what are our other weak points, what ways can we try and safeguard it to the best of our ability. And obviously, it took a while. We weren't sat down twiddling our thumbs in between the last finale and this one. We did put in a lot of work to try and give ourselves the best chance. But unfortunately, players still managed to find a method of DDoSing that used. That obviously caused some lag issues for some of the players on the server. It didn't affect everybody. And that meant a handful of people essentially unfairly lost some of their fights. Then we ensued into quite a long delay as we tried to really understand what happened and try and put new protections in place. So obviously that caused disruption on the evening. It was quite a lengthy delay. I'm sure people remember Oda having to juggle his sharks for like half an hour straight. That's a learning point as well, right? It shouldn't be necessary for a player to have to do that. But what we wanted to do was make sure we did everything we could in that time frame to try and solve those issues. And obviously, the rest of it went smoothly after that point.
Is this something
does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Is this something that will always happen, do you think, with Deadman? Is it something that has always happened with Deadman?
DDoSing isn't the only issue that's affected Deadman in the past. There's been a combination of bugs that have come from ourselves as well. It's not all just DDoSing and such. But any online tournament, I guess particularly when there's money involved, as prizes as well, that incentive will be there, that risk will be there. And it's just about how we handle the risk. It's about what do we do if it goes wrong. And I can't say anything other than, like, it sucks, right? It really does suck because we really do want to do these Deadman finales. They're brilliant. They're super entertaining. But we are obviously beholden to this risk every time we do it. So that's what we need to look at. We need to assess what can we do in the case that a DDoS happens. And the current format of Deadman is pretty difficult to handle that with. There's no easy way to say, let's replay this one match. because it's very programmatic, right? It's like everything progresses and players get logged out once they've lost. It's very hard to undo it and take you back to the same setup you were at the start of that fight, etc., etc. So what we want to look at is other ways to run, you know, PvP events in general. Obviously, LAN, doing things in person when it's not going to be liable to DDoS at all is one great way to do it. But essentially, having the ability to just replay a match and such will be a vast help anyway. But the key thing is, we don't want to deliver a tournament that's just going to be subject to problems, because it's not good for anybody. It's not good for us. It's not good for the players who are getting a subpar experience as members inside of it as well. The other issue with a Deadman finale is that it's 2,000 people. So a LAN isn't really a viable solution for Deadman in that format either. So there's a lot of conversations for us to have, but you know, there's more words said in the Gazette as well, where we talk about this, so you can give that a read too. But essentially, you know, we want to put this sort of money, like prize money, towards doing PvP events and tournaments. But ideally, let's try and do them in a way that isn't, you know, beholden to these kind of risks.
Well said, and thanks for summarizing that. Please go ahead.
If I could add a little bit to that, it's as I'm sure everyone in the chat is fully qualified network admins, as they all claim to be. It really is kind of one of those things that you can throw a lot of money at it here and there and do everything you can to try and mitigate it and spend thousands of man hours to try and do a lot of these things. And ultimately, when it comes to the ways around DDoSing, is that you're forever going to be chasing anything. It's unfortunate, and I'm not saying it's an excuse for what has happened and the issues that we've had in the past as a result of it, but I do think that it's not just as simple as throw money at it, buy new servers, and everything else as people seem it is to be. It's a lot more complex than that. But yeah, like I said, it's not an excuse, and the issues have happened, but I do think there is a little bit of player learning on the other side as well in order to kind of understand how these things work, and it's not as straightforward or as a cut and paste as it should be.
I think it just sucks to know that PvP feels like it's an underserved part of the community, but it's like, how do we best serve that part of the community when it feels like certain parts within the PvP community want to like go at it and potentially ruin it for other members of the PvP community. And obviously we want to make sure that the PvP community is served, and just figuring out the best way to do that would be my input on it. A lot of people have asked, like, why don't we just implement Bounty Hunter? And I kind of want to get your takes on it. Like, this is like a discussion, so it's not a Q&A. And I'm just kind of curious about the devs and Bruno as QA, your input on it. Like, why don't we focus on other things in PvP, like Bounty Hunter, which is what they've been kind of asking us for?
Okay,
Go ahead,
if you want to go, Bruno.
Okay, I'll try to take this one. For Bounty Hunter specifically, I think part of the problem was when there wasn't many rewards, people complained that it was dead and not worth doing. When we added rewards, it became way too overpowered and players rigged it too much, so I had to remove it. So I kind of sound like a broken record, but when it comes to this sort of stuff, it is a lot about balancing, and we can't have nice things because people ruin them, unfortunately. So we try to have good things whilst they are still balanced and still fun to play and stuff like that. I think something like Last Man Standing is kind of in a good place right now, where it can be fun and it's fairly rewarding if you're doing it right, but it's nowhere near the scale of what Bounty Hunter 2 used to be.
I think there's also some appetite for doing a version of it, at least like investigating what we can do and what we can come up with, given the time to design something properly. But yeah, so far, I know the PvP arena has taken precedent over that, mainly because the dual arena was removed, and so there was kind of a want to fill that gap. But yeah, obviously that team will still have projects once that's out, which is fairly soon. That's super exciting. And yeah, I'm hopeful that we can see something more in the wilderness fairly soon.
So yeah, to expand on it a little bit further, I work with the PvP, the core group of the team working on the PvP stuff at the moment, and the idea is kind of the first things I want to do is deliver the projects that we have promised and agreed that we were already going to do, which is a case of delivering the PvP arena, which, as Elena said, comes out very, very soon. And then after that, we have the Wilderness boss rework, which we have promised for at least 2 years that we want to deliver, which is the reworks of Venenatis, Callisto, and Vetian. So I'm hoping we can share some of that stuff that we've got brewing soon once the arena's kind of live and everything's run smooth with that. And yeah, we've done some base design work already. We've got an idea of kind of things like we want and rewards, etc., that we'll then start speaking to players about, including the fact that we now have the Discord where we've got a group of people from various parts of the community involved as well that we're discussing. And then kind of once those two are done, that's when we get to turn around and go, okay, what is it that this community is wanting? What is it we need to do in general? And kind of then taking the basis of how we move forward, coming from the core group of players that it's more than likely to affect the most, whether that's adding Bounty Hunter, whether that's doing batches of Quoll against the Wilderness, whether that's taking some of the stuff that was proposed in the latest Game Jam and then applying that into existing areas of the Wilderness, given that the project itself would have taken about 6 months to do completely, but there may be some smaller things that we can add in and kind of extend. So it's now putting the onus on us to work with those that are most involved in it to direct the way that that team is going to be working. So if ultimately that means Bounty Hunter is what people want the most, then chances are that is going to be the thing that happens after the Wilderness boss rework.
I think like the way that you explained it made me realize how many different types of PvP there really is in the game. You have LMS, you have obviously this area which is going to be the PvP arena, which will appeal to some people. Then you have the Wilderness and all of those different types of like areas within the Wilderness that appeals to different types of players, people who like to PvP in clans and people who like to do single PKing. And then obviously people who want Bounty Hunter. And I think the one thing that I still don't understand yet, so maybe you guys, maybe chat can give insight on it, but as like a bit of a noob when it comes to PvP, I see players asking for PvP updates a lot, but in terms of the amount of like PvP updates that we have done, obviously we could always do more, but we do have the PvP arena coming. We had some various tweaks to the Wilderness and things like that. So there may be some PvP updates that we do that don't appeal to like other PvPers, but we still get the flack for not doing PvP updates, if that makes sense. But it's the case that sometimes we are doing PvP updates, they're just not appealing to those specific types of PvPers. That's how it comes across to me. I don't know if chat kind of understands that like mentality, but like there are PvP updates coming. It's just not the PvP updates that people necessarily want, maybe. And maybe it's a case of just finding out what PvP updates PvPers want and delivering those, if that makes sense.
That's exactly kind of what we're wanting to do after delivering the first couple of projects that we have and that we already promised. They're not going to please everyone. And that's a really tough thing to do when it comes to the PvP community itself, because as you explained, there is multiple different like types of PvP or PKing, depending on how you look at it. So as soon as we can integrate more of those in, then that's exactly what we're going to do. And I think some of it is, whilst I genuinely believe that they are rightly aggravated about the amount of time that they have received in comparison to other sections of the community, we also have to remember that the majority of people that consider themselves to be content or happy with how things are going generally won't say anything. People tend to say more when they have an issue with something. So you're always going to see a fair amount of negativity from a community that is underserved, and it may look like it is more than what it actually is, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or we shouldn't listen to it. It's about being able to quantify it and working with them and ourselves together in order to work out what is the best way forward to please the most amount in that community with the dev resource and time that we have.
Agree.
I think you're
100%.
definitely, yeah, I agree with everything there. I'd just like to say that I agree with PvP being an underserved community historically. But I also agree that at least this year, and from what I've seen, the plan is to continue doing that, putting more resource into PvP. Like Justin said, sorry, Modrock, completely doxed you then. There is a dedicated team for this now, and we have several things on the roadmap to work on. The only problem is you can't please everyone at once. That's not to say that you can't affect every area in PvP, but you just can't do it in one update. You need to space it out. So we'll get there eventually. I strongly believe that.
And that's the idea. There has been more positivity within the team as a whole for how we're starting to look at PvP, and that's not just on our development level as well. That's on the senior level with our executive producer, who listens to a lot of what we've got to say and discusses with things like that, and knows that we want to actively put more into it. So that's what we're trying to do, and it is going to take some time. I wish we could snap our fingers and kind of a lot of the stuff that we want to do will be done tomorrow. But like I said, we've got a lot more involvement in the team in wanting to push for this. A lot more involvement in CM as well. Mod Goblin is absolute king at the moment of all the stuff that he's he's dealing with and helping out with in order to get the PvP team like the right kind of information and dealing with everything, so we can essentially be the best development team that we can in order to deliver content for that community.
Absolutely. And like the only thing I would add, just because this is a discussion, this isn't a Q&A, just a discussion, but it does suck from a CM point of view when I'm reading socials and I'm behind the scenes. I can see the devs working to try and please the community, and we genuinely want good feedback, but it really sucks that in some cases, like a perceived lack of knowledge, or maybe we say the wrong thing in terms of PvP, can bite you in the butt. Even today, like my kind of wishy-washy statement about how I felt about PvP as someone that doesn't really engage in PvP, you could see like the knives coming out, the pitchforks, and I just kind of wanted let people know that, you know, we have varying levels of skill within the team. Obviously, it's no secret, like someone like me, I'm not a PvPer, but I'm really keen to see that side of the community happy. Like, we just want to see PvPers happy if that's achievable, and just do our best to act on the feedback in the best way. So please cut us some slack. We've seen, you know, obviously, sometimes we make a bit of a slip up in terms of what we say, and we really apologize about that. But it's like that can be a deterrent, and I don't want anything to deter PvP from getting what it needs. So just be mindful about that if possible.
And I just want to talk a little bit about PvP. What I would really like us to do is come forward and present to the players sort of like how we see the entire landscape of PvP. So, as in, much like you were both saying, Light and Rock, there's a ton of different PvP content. From Arena to Wilderness to Deep Wilderness to Bounty Hunter to PvP worlds as well. To even the mini-games like LMS and even the softer mini-games like Castle Wars, right? How does this landscape sit? What role does LMS serve? What role does PvP worlds serve? What role does Bounty Hunter serve? I would like to present this as almost like that cohesive strategy, just explain to the player base what we think all these different components are for, how they work together, and so on. Such that we've got a really good, solid understanding of how these things work together, such that they're not also conflicting. There's a lot of different places you can go to do 1v1 fights. So that's hard for them all to be alive, right? Like, you also spread them out, and that's also on the back of our minds. Like, if you spread everybody out, everything's going to appear less populated as well. So, does Bounty Hunter clash with PvP worlds? I think that's a valid question. I'm interested in what everybody in this call thinks. Does Bounty Hunter clash with PvP worlds? Is there a need for it to be one or the other? Or do they both serve different needs?
I feel like they both serve different needs. As someone who hasn't really done that much of either of them, I still feel like people enjoy kind of like the high risk sort of PKing more in PvP worlds than Bounty Hunter, I guess. Especially because you can just not get targets. But it'd be a bit annoying if you went in there with the intention of like doing those sort of like high risk fights, and then you walk in and you get a target and they might like kind of just get in the way of the fight and stuff like that. So I think they both serve a purpose. So if we were to add Bounty Hunter back, I wouldn't expect us to get rid of PvP worlds.
Fair play. That's interesting.
All right.
And then, yeah, I on the topic of Bounty Hunter, because that was, somewhat where we started. Sorry, Light. Just to carry on this conversation, because, like, I'm interested also in what thoughts, like, you have, Rock, or anybody else. Like, what do you even envisage? What do you actually envisage as a Bounty Hunter update? What would you like to do? Or is it too early? Do we not want to talk about sort of like,
It's hard because it's not designed yet, right?
Yeah.
It's not
a deep
designed
question.
yet, so it's more like a vision. Like, how could you see it panning out potentially?
Yeah.
I find it very hard to say because I never played Bounty Hunter as I used to be. I didn't play, the Bounty Hunter Crater, I believe it's called, back in the day. So for me, I would need to take some time and actually research what that was like, and potentially talk to people who played it as well, and see what they really want from it.
I think a lot of what we've already done and what I've experimented with, the first iteration of Bounty Hunter seemed to have been the best in terms of what players actually liked and enjoyed about it. At the same time, whilst they're also reminiscing about the things that happened in the Bounty Hunter Crater. So as Elena said, it's not really fully developed yet, so it's hard to say. But one thing that will probably serve us well is having a look at all the various things we've done, what worked, what didn't, what did players like, what did players not like, what can we handle and deal with as well at the same time. And then kind of starting from the base that we've already got, and then it being fully embedded within the community to build up the system as to how they want it, but at the same time, it's like how we can also manage it feasibly as well.
One thing I think you could do well with as well is try to think about or give some thought as to how you could kind of get people interested in doing it, right? Like, maybe try to get more people into PvP through that system. Maybe it has different tiers, so you have like an outer ring perhaps where the odds aren't that great, like maybe you don't lose all your items, you lose a few, and then the further in you go, the riskier it gets, but maybe the more rewarding yet. So the newbier people, I would say, would maybe stick to the outskirts, and then the further in you go, the more difficult people you'd hopefully meet.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot we can do and a lot we need to think about when it comes into it. I know Modlight is keen to jump onto the next topic, given how many we have to go through today. But like I said, we do have a Discord that has been set up. I'll try to organise, see if I get some socials to kind of repost the invite links out, that we are letting people view. There is only a small number of contributors that were picked from the original survey that we did. So as it stands, we're not currently adding more people into the have the ability to chat about it, despite the dozens of DMs I get every week for people asking to do that. When we are going to grab some more, that's what we will do. But yeah, that's kind of where we're starting with our discussions on the topic, in order to kind of involve the community, and that's where a lot of it will build up. But generally anything that gets shared in there would be fit for public consumption, given that everyone could see it. So whilst doing anything posted in there, generally will get posted around socials and other areas as well.
Great chat, guys. We have like 3 big topics to get through, so I'll probably split them into future streams. Not sure which one is best to go through first. We'll talk about game modes just because I feel like it's a hot topic. So I have an image to share of some of the game modes that we pitched in a survey. Not sure if we can show that now, but it's should be questions.png for the live stream producer. Sorry about this technical stuff. But I'll just talk about it briefly. So we ran a survey to get more insights into what you guys thought about game modes. Should they be temporary? Should they be permanent? How long should they run for? What types of game modes did you like? Out of leagues, Deadman, things like that. We just basically wanted a temperature reading on how you felt about these things. So this is not promising that it will come into the game. This is in no means suggesting that it will happen or it won't. But essentially, we wanted to know what you thought about it. So you can see things like fresh start servers, vanilla OSRS, merchant man mode, seasonal madness, combined easy or hard mode, old school servers, and leagues and Deadman, which you're probably already familiar with. So we ran a survey, and Kieren, obviously you were involved a bit with that. What game modes came out on top from the survey? Like, what did you learn from it, basically?
So the results overall were like super interesting in how like polarizing they were. A lot of people for and a lot of people against, basically across all of them. There's certainly some context as well, like Deadman has less people for it than the others. But we know that. That's not a surprise. So you've got to look at these results sort of in context and understand, well, yeah, Deadman is not trying to target everybody, while something like easy and hard mode, well, obviously it has sort of a much broader casual audience and interest. So it's really interesting. So it's not as simple as just like ranking them, that this one did better than that one and that one, because you have to kind of look at them in terms of who they're for, what they're trying to do, and so on. But we also looked at how active people were. So like, we posted the survey to people who were playing the game, people who weren't playing the game, people who played it recently, that sort of thing. And some of I think that generally one of the more popular ideas was, as I say, easy and hard mode. People seem to really hook onto that idea. Sorry, before everyone goes, oh, he said hook in a Geordie accent. But easy and hard mode, like a load of interesting ideas that kind of spawned off that, like how interesting the game could be, almost with like a difficulty setting, is kind of how I imagined it in my head. So that one came out pretty popular. Even things like merchant mode, which that was a big community suggestion like multiple years ago. It's maybe come up every now and then. Didn't seem that popular. It didn't do as well in the survey that I thought it might well do. While something like fresh start servers was pretty popular amongst players who weren't currently playing, but not very popular for people who are currently playing old school. And so each of them have a different flavor. Each of them have a different flavor, right? Like to how they're received. Permanent leagues had some interest, but quite polarizing. Some people think it shouldn't be a permanent mode at all. So yeah, it was fascinating, and obviously these are just a selection of different ideas, right? It's not every idea that we've got for game modes. There's plenty of other ideas we've discussed as well. But yeah, we just wanted to sort of throw some out there, ask some questions, see what people thought, and try and just get a reading on sort of like how people are looking at different kinds of ideas.
The one piece of like community sentiment that I've seen a lot of, and I'm not sure if we can talk about it today, but is like, do temporary game modes come at the cost of dev time on the main game?
Well, they shouldn't. That's not to say they don't affect it, because this stuff does obviously have knock-on effects, and like the code base gets a little bit more complicated. All these aspects. What we want to do is try and serve a good balance between making sure that we're delivering great content, new raids, bounty hunter updates, new quest lines, additions to quest lines, new skilling features, etc. That is absolutely core to what Oldschool is. So we got to keep doing that. That's absolutely going to be the core of what we do. That's like, so I see that as sort of the minimum. That is our bread and butter. That's what, you know, for the most part, what people are subscribing for. You subscribe so that you can get good game content coming out and updates coming out. So we got to do that. And I realized, like, the last couple of years, like, we haven't been as consistent and as predictable as maybe a lot of the players would like us to be. That's something we want to get better at. But in addition to that, I want to be ambitious and look at, like, how else we can serve awesome old school experiences. Leagues was quite experimental when we first did it, and it's now turned into this thing that we do once every year and a half sort of thing, and really gives you a different spin on old school. Same as Iron Man modes were very experimental and driven by the community originally, and even things like Dead Man back when we first did that, completely out there idea that we wanted to bring and give you a different way to play the game. And look, to add to that, players of a lot of players in this chat. I mean, type in the chat when you first started playing RuneScape, and I'll wait a second to see what you all say, right? But I'm expecting a lot of like 2005s, 2007s. You've all been playing a long time. So many of you played for a long, long time, and so you've all played the game a ton. And I think it's really interesting to be able to give you a way to play that game you love and have played for the last decade and a half in some cases. You know, a fresh lick of paint almost. And I think a game mode gives you a really good way to do that. Playing the game as an Iron Man instantly feels so much different to how you play as a main versus how you play when you're playing Dead Man, or a League even changes it up even more radically. So I think it's a good thing to do. But what we got to do is get the balance right and make sure that that minimum offering, as I say, like of you getting your quests, you're getting your bread and butter, you're getting your new skilling features, you're getting your new PvP updates. That's core to what Old School is. The game mode stuff should be in addition to that, which means also that internally, you know, it's not as simple as we have one dev team for X and one dev team for Y. Essentially, we just have a bunch of different developers, and the teams flex all the time based on the projects. But we got to also have the right amount of staff to be able to handle all these different things, such that one isn't at the detriment of another.
I really like the way that game modes allow you to experiment as devs and flex your creativity and try out different things. I love the idea that like potentially you could do something in a league that players might get to try out and then love it and then get it into the main game potentially if they really like it. So yeah. Curious about the panel. What do you all think about the leagues that have happened? Which is your favorite one? Which would you personally rerun if you could?
I'd love to rerun Trailblazer. That was like the peak for me. As much as I love Shattered Relics, I think Trailblazer was just the king. And from what I understand, it would be really easy to do as well. It's kind of ready to go. And we could just take what we learned from the first run. Maybe there were some balance issues there, like with the last recall rune. But we can make some changes, and I think that would be really good to rerun.
Yeah, I agree with
that's
that.
definitely
I think,
my favorite. Sorry, you go, Bruno.
I think, I think Twisted League was great. But if we were to replay it, I think it would have lost a lot of what made it great. Because I think part of what made it great was not everyone had been in Zaya or Kieren that much, so it was kind of a new experience for a lot of people. But as a rerun, I think Trailblazer would definitely be the one, because even if you rerun it, there's still so many things you can do to change the way that you play it, because whilst you might have taken one path the first time round, you could just take a different path this time. So I didn't go to Prifddinas last time, so maybe this time I could go to Prifddinas and check out the content there. So that would be good.
I think Trailblazer definitely had the most replayability in that sense, so it would probably be the best one to rerun. I think Twisted League has this like special spot in my heart just because it was the first one, and it just felt so unique and special jumping into it for the first time, never having seen anything like this in Oldschool. So it's hard to say which one's the best. Obviously, Shattered Relics kind of had all those learnings from the previous leagues as well, and it was just really interesting concept to explore. So I really love them all, and I can't wait to see what the next one's going to be, honestly.
What about you? What league would you redo?
So out of the 3 leagues, I only played the most recent one, Shattered. So I don't have overly much experience. I'm not someone who is necessarily enamored by temporary game modes. For me, I'd rather spend the time playing on my main, because it's like basically a permanent upgrade where I'm getting the XP in, as opposed to something over 6 months. I do completely get the whole idea behind it, and the fact that they are awesome and people enjoy them, but there's people that don't as well. And for me, I do question whether we've done too many game modes recently, but I do think one a year is probably about right, whether that is one league or one dead man or something like that, to at least give us variety. But yeah, leagues aren't for my type of playing, I'm afraid.
Fair. All right. We only have about 10 to 15 minutes. I don't want to keep the guests too long. So we're going to speed through 2 topics. There's a bunch of other topics that you guys want us to discuss. So let us know if these types of streams are something that you like, and we'll do another one potentially. But wanted to touch on Pride because this happened recently. From my point of view, personally, I can't speak on behalf of others, but this was long overdue, and it's one of my favorite community highlights so far. Something I'm proudest of since I've been at Jagex. So just discussing, like, why did we decide to do it? What do you guys think?
I think in previous years, between 2017 and 2022, we were always perhaps a little bit, I don't want to say scared, because I don't think scared is the right word, but a little cautious about approaching this topic, because for those of us that were in the team at the time, and shout outs to Mod Wolf as well, because he got the brunt of it and didn't deserve what happened. But it did scar quite a few people that were around at the time, just the amount of vitriol and hate and undeserved bigotry that occurred as a result. But now it was kind of a case of where we've turned around and gone, no, okay, there is going to be some backlash about it because there are people that think that way. However, this is something that we believe as a team, that we believe as a company, and we feel is invested in, and our players do too. And it really is a case of the people that are making the most noise are the smallest group of people that are surrounding it. So it was time where we grit our teeth and went, we're doing this. This is something we feel adamant about, and that's what we did. And the Pride event was a small holiday event, almost the same as anything others, with references and wit thrown in from the developers and all the people that worked on it, and the Pride March as well. We'd not done something like that before, and even in the case of organising it amongst like yourself, Modlight, and Mod Sani as well, who did a lot of the work in preparing and kind of getting stuff involved. we were also a bit unnerved about trying to do this because we hadn't done it before, and it came out and was completely fantastic. Everyone turned out to show their support. Yes, there was people on the other side as well, but the less said about those, the better. And I think it has completely reinvigorated the way that the team thinks about this kind of content and how this behaves, and the community. And I would definitely like us to sign up and be able to do an event every year, along with a Pride March every single year, where people can get involved, hopefully done across more worlds, because we filled up more worlds than we expected due to the amount of people that wanted to participate and take part in the Pride March in a good manner, where we filled up 3 worlds pretty quickly, and just all round show our support for these people that deserve it. And it is kind of like the hinder group of our current generation, like there has been in the past, that eventually somewhat became normalized, and that's what we want to do by creating these events, by having these marches and doing these things. This is something that should be considered normal and part of society, and we are wanting to do our part in order to continue with that.
Well said.
Really well said. I saw some people thinking that this was some sort of PR stunt or something, and that's just so far from the truth of it. Because the truth is that this was something that the team really, really wanted to do. It was absolutely driven by the team and taken to production, basically begging for us to be able to find the little spot in the roadmap for us to be able to do this year. And I'm so happy that we actually were able to do that. And to me, all those people protesting against it, they just show how much we really need these things, you know? They are exactly the reason why these people feel like they need to show off who they are. So, absolutely, I want to keep doing Pride.
Yeah, 100%. You guys are both speaking amazingly on this, and I just want to add as well, like, we have a large LGBT community in old school RuneScape. I want that community to feel that this is a place they are welcomed in. And I would rather make the haters, those bigots, or whatever you want to call them, less welcome. I would rather welcome the love and say goodbye to the hate. And things like this can make sure that that is clear to the LGBT community, that we do welcome them. We want them to be a part of the entire old school community. They're just as welcome as anybody else. And, you know, simply put, the LGBT community has been oppressed. It's still oppressed across the whole world. And this is why this needs saying. And this is why this needs including in our game. And my God, did the positivity and love the community showed outweigh any of the negative crap that we also saw. So, absolutely worth it. And expect us to be doing Pride events in the future. Certainly Pride marches in the future, because it was an absolutely wonderful thing to witness. Wonderful thing to see everybody get involved in as well. Because, man, we filled multiple worlds. Multiple worlds had marches going on, and that to me is pretty incredible. Because normally old school players don't do anything unless there's a reward for it. This was the reward here was the love to show to the LGBT community, and that was enough.
I think just to add, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Bart.
I was going to say, just to add a little bit more onto that, there have been some discussions internally about like how the Pride event went, and that we're all happy about it. And one thing we did discuss that we do actively want to do in the future, whilst we didn't unfortunately get time to do it because we still wanted to launch it in Pride Month this year, is that in the future we will be looking at the existing rewards that have been given and future rewards that we look to give as well, and also look to include subsections within the LGBT community, and also not only display the pride colours, but also look to display the trans colours, the non-binary colours, and all the other sections that we can deal with as well, and make them feel included in dealing with in putting them into our community.
That's awesome. And yeah, I was just gonna add like a little story time from my end. I am a noob. I've never been to like huge events in game before. I had no idea that at a certain point the game will stop rendering players if you reach a certain amount. And so when we were doing the Pride March and, you know, we had a group of players, I was like, great, this is our group of players. Awesome, let's go marching. I had no idea how many people there were. Like, it was incredible. Like, they just wouldn't render, which was just crazy. It blew me away about how many people there were. When I was told that the worlds were full and that people were trying to get into a third world, I just couldn't believe it. It was a really lovely event. It's probably the highlight of my year so far, just seeing how much support there was, how much love there was. And I'm so glad that we did it, and I'm so glad that you guys came to support us. We love you so much. Right, we were going to talk about a new skill as well, and polling, and a bunch of other topics, but unfortunately, we have gone over time. So probably we'll have to save that for another stream. If you guys did enjoy this kind of format of streams where it's more of a discussion rather than a Q&A, do let us know, because we can do more of them. If you didn't like it and you would prefer Q&As, let us know constructively and we'll take that on board. So
if I can just clarify as well, that's just on the topic in general, no like announcements or anything.
Oh
I
yes,
see people
sorry.
wanting to hear about the skill. It's just
Yeah, no.
general conversation, nothing.
Sorry,
nothing
I
in
should have
particular.
clarified that. No new skill news from us, but in terms of questions about what devs think about a new skill. Sorry about that, that's completely my mistake. So yeah, we were going to talk about it, we were going to ask about dev opinions on it, we were going to ask about why it's failed or why it hasn't happened, and then just discuss it as a kind of like round table discussion. So if that interests you, let us know and we can do another stream like this, but we won't be able to cover it in this stream. It probably warrants its own stream, so we'll probably do that if that's something you guys want. So yeah. Right, so wrapping up then, we'll go through the announcements. Exclamation mark game update, some highly anticipated changes to unranked GIM mode and improvements to Giants Foundry. You can find that with exclamation mark game update. Exclamation mark transcript for last week's stream. We talked about player suggestions. It was a general Q&A, so make sure you catch up on that. Has a rare appearance from Mod Ash, who I love it when he's on streams. He talks about like the most technical, cool stuff ever. And then exclamation mark Gazette. We recently published the Gazette, which has more information about like upcoming content and things like that. And statements around DMM, so make sure that you check that out. All right, that's it for this stream. Does anybody have any final words or any conclusions?
This format's been fun. I've liked it.
Cool,
Yeah,
I'm glad to
lot,
hear.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can do more like podcasty style streams, because I just feel like you guys get a chance to talk a bit more broadly about stuff rather than like directed focused questions, which sometimes you may want to talk about something else. So I think it's really important to make sure that players feel connected with you and get more about like behind the scenes kind of insight. So hopefully this was a W. All right, I think we're good to wrap up, guys. We'll see you next time. Let us know what you think. Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.